Have you ever noticed how the word ideology gets thrown around and a lot of the time it's kind of used as an insult? Well, today we're going to break down why that is. We're exploring what the word actually means, and to do it, we're only going to use this one single hand-drawn map. So this is it. This is our entire guide for today. I know, it might look a little chaotic at first glance, but it's actually this brilliant map of how all these different political worldviews, from liberalism to socialism, see the very concept of ideology. So we're going to follow all these little threads and see how one single word can mean so many different and often totally conflicting things. Which brings us to the big question, right? So what is ideology? And that's really the whole point of our map here. As we're about to see, there is no single easy answer. Is it some kind of noble vision for a better future, or is it a dangerous trap for the mind? Honestly, it really just depends on where you're standing. Okay, so here's our game plan, our route through the map. We're going to look at the core critiques from the liberal, conservative, and socialist perspectives. Then we'll check out a couple of other interesting frameworks before seeing how our source actually pulls all of this together into a really elegant three-part definition. So our first stop is the liberal view. And from this perspective, ideology is not a good thing. Not at all. In fact, it's seen as a kind of mental prison. The main idea here is that ideologies are these systems built on what our source calls claims of truth. Basically, it's any belief system that comes along and says, we have all the answers, case closed, no more questions. Now, for the liberal tradition, which is all about open debate and individual thought, that kind of closed-loop thinking is, by its very nature, repressive. And our map gives us some pretty stark examples. From a liberal point of view, you look at big 20th century movements like fascism and communism, and those are the ultimate ideologies, right? They demand total belief, they crush any kind of dissent, and they try to force every single person into this rigid, prepackaged system. Okay, so if the liberal view sees ideology as a mental cage, the conservative view sees it as something totally different, a fantasy. The danger here shifts from repression to just sheer unreality. Our source is really blunt about this one. For conservatives, an ideology is, and I'm quoting here, an extended system of thoughts which has no relevance to the real world. So you can think of it like a perfect blueprint for society that sounds amazing in a classroom, but it just completely ignores the messy, complex, unpredictable way that real people and real societies actually work. And here's the kicker. The conservative argument goes that when you try to force these perfect utopian blueprints onto the real world, they shatter. And the attempt to impose that abstract ideal on a messy reality, well, that inevitably leads to repression, chaos, and violence, because it just ignores how people actually are. All right, let's pivot to our third major perspective, which comes from the socialist tradition. Now, this view argues that ideology isn't a mistake and it's not a fantasy. It's a weapon. It's a tool, specifically for social and economic control. According to this viewpoint, the dominant ideology in any society is basically just a set of distorted, even false ideas that are cooked up by the ruling class. The whole point isn't to find truth. It's to get the masses to buy into it, to justify the existing power structure, and to make it all seem perfectly natural and, just the way things are. The result of this is this really powerful idea at the heart of the socialist critique, false consciousness. This is the state where that dominant ideology works so well that the working class actually starts to accept its own exploitation. They come to believe the system is fair or that it's just the natural order, instead of seeing the real class structure that's holding them in place. Okay, let's just pause for a second and see where we are. For liberals, ideology is repressive. For conservatives, it's an irrelevant fantasy. For socialists, it's a tool for class control. I mean, that's three completely different and pretty negative takes on the exact same word. But believe it or not, our map is not done yet. So now, let's explore some of the outer branches on our map, because the source also gives us two more really distinct viewpoints that add even more flavor to our understanding: the fascist and the ecologist perspectives. These two critiques are so interesting. The fascist view kind of dismisses ideology because it's too intellectual, too systematic. It rejects all those complex theories in favor of raw instinct, passion, and the will to power. And then, in total contrast, the ecologist view doesn't reject ideology for how it thinks, but for when it started thinking that way, during the rise of industrialization. And I think this ecologist perspective is so unique. It frames these other big ideologies like liberalism and socialism as being kind of like modern secular religions. They're seen as these complete rule books that industrial societies try to force onto the entire world, reshaping everything, including nature itself, to fit their rigid, human made plans. So we've seen 5 different critiques, and almost all of them have been negative, right? But our map also gives us a neutral, functional definition. Instead of asking what ideology is, it asks, what does an ideology do? And the answer, it turns out, comes in 3 parts. If you look down at the bottom of our map, you'll spot this simple little Venn diagram. Now, this isn't another critique. This is a structural definition. It argues that for any set of ideas to really be considered a full-blown ideology, it has to have 3 essential interconnected parts. And here they are. First, every ideology offers a critique. It looks at the world as it is and says, here's what's wrong. Second, it offers a vision. It paints a picture of a better world, a future society that fixes all those problems. And third, it gives you a theory of change. It's the roadmap, the actions, the policies that will get us from the flawed present to that ideal future.
So let's pull back and look at the whole map one last time. We've gone on this whole journey, from seeing ideology as repressive or abstract or a tool of control, all the way to understanding its basic structure as a critique, a vision, and a plan. All these different pieces give us a much, much richer picture of what's really going on when people use this word.
And that leaves us with one final and I think pretty powerful question. Our map has shown us that one person's common sense is another person's repressive system or their abstract fantasy or their tool of control. So the next time you hear someone use the word ideology, especially if they're using it as an insult, ask yourself, which definition are they using? And maybe more importantly, which one are you?